The heat shimmered off the asphalt of Elm Street as Patricia and Melonie walked toward Northwood High. They moved in parallel, separated by a thin, invisible wall of habit. For 20 years, their lives had touched only at the edges. Patricia kept her eyes on her calculus textbook, while Melonie adjusted her physics notes. They were academic rivals. The silence between them shattered the day the crimson envelopes arrived. Both had been accepted into the MIT scholarship program. Patricia scanned the financial breakdown, then looked at Melonie. One was a full ride, the other was half. Patricia folded the paper tightly, her knuckles white. "No one needs to know," she whispered, staring past the school gates. Melonie gripped her own letter, her jaw set. "We make our families proud, both of us." A pact was sealed. They were no longer just running against each other. They were now running against the world, bound by a secret. The library became their sanctuary as the sun dipped below the horizon. They claimed the furthest table, hidden behind stacks of reference books. The air grew thick with the smell of lukewarm coffee and the sharp, rhythmic scratching of pens on paper. At first, the old habits flared. Patricia would finish a derivation and slide the notebook over with a sharp tap, a silent challenge. Melonie would scan it, find a flaw, and strike a line through the work with a heavy hand. It was a war of intellect, but the stakes had changed. When one faltered, the other did not gloat. She simply leaned in, pointed to the error, and waited. They drilled each other until their voices grew hoarse and the library lights hummed in the empty hall. They traded secrets of the curriculum, sharing shortcuts and insights. The invisible wall that had separated them for 2 decades began to dissolve under the pressure of their shared ambition. Every solved equation was a brick in a new foundation. They were no longer 2 lines running in parallel. They were a single force, pushing against the same locked door. By the time they packed their bags each night, the silence between them was no longer cold. It was the quiet of 2 people who had finally learned how to breathe in sync. The senior lab was a sterile cage of glass and metal, smelling of ozone and harsh cleaning agents. They were mid-experiment, the air thick with the hum of equipment. Melonie reached for a beaker, her hand steady, then stopped. She swayed. The glass slipped from her fingers, shattering against the floor. Patricia turned, ready to snap a retort about the wasted chemicals, but the words died in her throat. Melonie was already sinking, her knees hitting the tile with a dull thud. She gripped the edge of the workbench, her knuckles turning bone white before she slumped forward. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the frantic rhythm of Patricia's breathing. Help arrived in a blur of white coats and urgent voices. The diagnosis came within the hour. Aggressive appendicitis. Surgery followed. A swift, clinical intervention that left Melonie confined to a room of shadows and silence. The reality set in during the long, quiet nights. Melonie stared at the ceiling, her hands clutching the edges of her blankets until her fingers ached. She felt the momentum of their shared dream slipping through her grasp. "I am falling behind, Patricia," she whispered, her voice thin and brittle. "I cannot lose this." The weight of the words hung in the air, a physical pressure. Patricia did not offer empty comfort. She arrived the next afternoon, her arms straining under the weight of a dozen heavy textbooks. She moved through the bedroom, clearing space on the desk, stacking notes, and turning the quiet room into a makeshift classroom. She broke down complex physics lectures into simple, actionable steps, drawing diagrams on scrap paper until the ink ran dry. When Melonie faltered, her focus drifting, Patricia leaned in and re-explained the concepts until the sun dipped below the horizon. The work was relentless. When the bedroom work was done, Patricia turned her attention to the faculty offices. She stood before the professors, presenting Melonie's past performance and current progress with a steady, unwavering gaze. She faced down skepticism and bureaucratic resistance, refusing to leave until she secured the extensions that kept Melonie's dream alive. Every hour was a battle against the clock. Patricia spent her nights in the library and her days in the bedroom, her own exhaustion masked by the drive to keep their path clear. The ceremony was a blur of movement and sound. When their names were called in unison, They stood and walked across the stage together. They reached for the diplomas, their hands steady, and held them high. The weight of the last few years finally lifted as they stepped back into the crowd. Melonie leaned toward Patricia, her eyes bright and clear. "You saved me, Pat." Patricia looked at her, the years of competition replaced by a steady, quiet strength. She offered a rare, genuine smile. "We did it, Mel. Together." They walked out of the school, leaving the heavy silence of the library behind, moving toward the life they had built side by side.